The safety car comes across the top of the hill. And I've got to say, there's not a better Sunday morning than you can see a full field of Australian GT Championship cars right up behind our safety car there that looks $1 million in its new livery. Big thanks to High-Tech Oils and Shannons for all of their assistance to keeping that car looking good. But it sort of pales into significance to the McLaren and the SLS right behind, doesn't it?
Sadly. It's a good-looking sport wagon, but at the end of the day, when you've got a field of SLS, AMGs, Lamborghinis, Porsches, Ferraris, Audis, Moslers, Ginettas, Ascaris, it's a pretty illustrious lineup. Lotus, I better add that in.
That Lotus did a good job yesterday. Tony Orford, welcome to the Australian GT Championship. Have a look at that, Mark Griffith too, right alongside there. Griffith Transport had support from Mick Vaudrey and the crew down at Vaudrey Truck Bodies earlier on as well. Richard Muscat now will have to draw on all of his experience as he draws this field alongside. He has got the pace, and he's got Clark Quinn right alongside in car one. 2 national titles to his name in the GT field at the moment. Richard Muscat just crowds him over there as the flag drops and the big 6.3 litre Mercedes accelerates away nicely. The Ginetta gets away well with Keith Kasulki as well as they charge down. Tony Quinn looks right up the inside, and he's going to take Clark in the Licorice Sticks McLaren.
Plenty of talk out of that big V12 Vantage. We saw it yesterday off the line. He powered ahead of pole sitter Stephen Richards from the second row to lead into turn one. Took Richo a good 7/8 of the lap to get the lead back. Of course, Richo's car starting rear of field. He handed the car across to car owner Justin McMillan, who's starting today. They're starting rear of field, so it'll be interesting to see how they come through. Things are going to get interesting at the compulsory pit stop at the midpoint of this race because there's time penalties based on driver gradings, which we'll get to a little bit later. But essentially what will happen is Richard Muscat will stop for 35 seconds longer than Stephen Richards. So Muscat's going to be keen to press on early in this race because that's a big advantage to give away to somebody the calibre of Stephen Richards.
Certainly is. And have a look at this. Honduras in last year's championship winning car pushing on well, just got past Peter Edwards as the gaggle of Audi start to line up there, and they're all on maximum attack, lights ablaze, and they all start to line up behind the Superbarn Porsche. It's a Rod Salmons Squirk Audi that is leading the way for these guys, and then it is the Equity One Audi as well from the Melbourne Performance Centre.
Dean Koutsamides will be at the wheel this morning. He let James Winslow start the race yesterday. Winslow held on to 5th position for much of the first stanza of the race before the pit stops, handed over, of course, to Dean during the compulsory stop. He did a fantastic job. Richard Muscat, first flying lap from a rolling start of 1:16.0. Has a 1.2 second lead. Tony Quinn still holding down position 2 with Clark Quinn right behind, but it's Steve Owen in the James Conduras X Clark Quinn car that's currently behind the wheel of the 47 Superbarn Porsche.
Ben Eggleston has pulled out the sharp sword this morning as he is swathing his way through the back of the field. At DNF yesterday is already on lap 1, charged his way from 23rd up to 16th. That's the big blue Alamoana property Aston Martin we see cresting the top of the Sandown Hill now, as we've got the Audis again starting to go. It's Steve McLaughlin, who will be very familiar to people trackside here at Sandown. He's done a lot of laps in the Victorian State Circuit Racing Championship and victories in his Viper. This is the new J McPem Audi. Looks $1 million on track as Richard Muscat leads Tony Quinn and Clark Quinn on lap 2.
1:10.72, the first real flying lap, first fast lap for Richard Muscat. That's a good start. That's much along the lines of the pace that Stephen Richards was setting at the front of the field yesterday, and also Richard Muscat. They and John Bowe split the fastest laps of this race between themselves over the course of the first 10 or so laps. But talking about Steve McLaughlin, of course, he's the reigning trophy class champion. And we were talking about Ben Eggleston. They broke a carbon fibre torque tube yesterday during the race. Had been brand new before the start of the weekend. He said the bumps here just don't suit the DBRS9, and that created a little bit of an issue for him. They were leading, tragically, the trophy class at the time that the torque tube let go.
Well, he has made his way onto the tail end of the trophy class with Keith Kasulki in his BMW-powered V8 out there as well. Probably one of the sweeter sounding cars on track. Really love to hear that
BMW
car
V10,
charge
V8,
down the
yes,
straight. Does
beautiful.
sound good.
See the drag race across the back straight between Jan Ginadasa and the LP520 trophy class Lamborghini with the V10 and the big V12 Aston Martin powering past. Ben Eggleston makes up another position. That moves him now up to position number 12. It's the Andrew McPherson Cup S Porsche, the AMAC car, or IMAC car rather, it's got IMAC on the side, as for position for trophy class, and currently the trophy class leader was the winner yesterday, Theo Konduris in his Cup S Porsche.
Justin McMillan's found the Hollywood switch there to get through. He's right on the flashing lights, trying to push his way through the field. Justin already made his way up to position 15. He's trying to tag onto the back of Ben Eggleston's as he's swathing through the field. He's actually gone through on Jan Ginadasa, and I was actually talking with Joe Ladoni and Paul Stevenson, of course, Formula 3 champion from years ago, that are turning the spanners down there for Jan, and they're really on the radio encouraging Jan to really start to take up the attack to these other guys in the trophy class.
We're talking about driver seatings earlier. What that essentially does is it adds a time penalty for the drivers the calibre of Steve Owen and Stephen Richards, who have V8 Supercar experience. Dan Gaunt's another one. When those drivers come into the pits, they need to stop another 9 seconds longer in that car to make up the deficit to some of the less full-time drivers, or the gentleman drivers, if you like.
Hey, it makes sense, doesn't it?
Absolutely, and it evens the field. We saw yesterday that the prime example of that is towards the end of the race across all the classes, everything was condensed towards the finish of this race. So Stephen Richards needs to stop 9 seconds longer than Richard Muscat by virtue of being with Justin McMillan, but by virtue of having won the Porsche Series last year, Richard Muscat also has to stop 9 seconds longer than Justin McMillan because he is a classified driver as a former championship-winning driver. So that's going to negate that disadvantage. But there's a 35-second additional disadvantage for Richard Muscat for winning the race yesterday by virtue of his starting position. Each row back from the front incurs an additional 5-second penalty, or less, as you come back from, say, the 10th row.
Young Richard,
doing this in reverse order, but you understand the process of what we're trying to explain.
Young Richard has already gone into the 109s, new lap record, 109.7638. He is charging along out there at the moment. Yesterday his best time was a 1:10.1, and he is already showing that he needs to get clear of the field. He's got 3 seconds, and it's 5 laps in, and we are nearly exactly 6 minutes in, so he's got his work cut out, as you said, in the opening stanza, opening lap of this race, Sean, but certainly there is so many battles going on within this field here. It's Brendan Cook and Matt Kingsley leading through there, and Michael Hovey in the Associated Projects car, brand new to GT racing in this class this year. 2
different categories. That's a My 11 2012 Carrera Cup car. So it's in a different category to the 2 cars either side of him. They're both challenge class cars. They're an older model, Porsche GT3 Cup car. They run in the challenge class. Michael Hovey this year, campaigning the car that Craig Baird took to victory in Carrera Cup last year, is in the trophy class, battling against the Lamborghinis and the Audis.
Just seeing the difference there between the 3.6 and the 3.8 litre Porsche there as Michael Hovey got through. He'd struggled a little bit on Friday, and yesterday it looks like he's really starting to get racy with it again. Now, of course, Michael Hovey last year ran the Ginetta and ran very, very well, and really took it up to Griffith throughout the year. But good to see him in the next class along and working his way through the field as Tony Quinn and our leaders are right now. Richard Muscat already gone through. We've also got this battle on the screen now. Dale Patterson. Great to see Dale Patterson out there in the Mosley. Harrop emblazoned across the front of the orange Mosley there. And we've got Justin McMillan menacing on the back of these two. He wants to get through on, I think that's Andrew McPherson there in the Porsche.
McMillan very early in the race was on the tail end of Ben Eggleston, and Eggleston's managed to move his way through the field up into the top 10, but Justin's still working his way past some of the trophy class cars. The problem at the moment for him is he's now 32 seconds behind the race leader after just 8 minutes in this race. At 35 seconds, the advantage turns back to Richard Muscat, despite having such a long pit stop. So Stephen Richards will have his work cut out for him to get through the field. But he said to me earlier in the weekend, I'm not sure we're an outright winner just yet in this Lamborghini. This isn't ideally the circuit that will best suit the Lamborghini. It's not known as a drag car. It doesn't quite have the performance in a straight line that some of the other elite championship class cars do, but certainly it makes up for that in the corners and the aero and the mechanical grip.
He climbs the hill now and charges up the inside of the Porsche there. But I tell you what, if it's not suited to here, wait till the next round of Phillip Island. That is where we'll see the Raging Bull start to ease its way through the front of the field.
But we certainly can't tone down the abilities of Richard Muscat in this gorgeous Erebus Motorsport GT SLS AMG. It's certainly been the pace setter whenever it's appeared over the course of the last 12 months, and it's doing so again. Richard Muscat's ability, though, is well and truly proven. 2 years in Porsche categories, has dominated those, taken the rookie title and taken the championship in his first 2 years of racing in cars. So he's well on the way to setting a new kind of record in the Australian GT Championship presented by Pirelli this weekend, and could go 2 from 2. Certainly at this early stage, 10 minutes into the race, he's holding a very nice lead over Tony Quinn and Clark Quinn for the outright victory yet again.
Steve McLaughlin there in the J McPem Audi LMS, as we're getting pictures now coming up the back straight, and that is the Lamborghini. He got through on that traffic now, and we've got Justin McMillan into position number 12, and he's going to start working his way now on to the back of Dean Koutsamides in the Audi. They're having a great battle through there. There is just in the background on screen at the moment is Jim Manolis, who didn't front yesterday, and it was one of those technical glitches you just want to put behind you.
Absolutely, that was a very unusual situation. Of course, the Trofeo Motorsport, the pits driver, he had a drama getting, as we see Ben Fossel fire down the inside of Brendan Cook to take away the lead in the, I think that would be the lead. Indira Pariachi is a little bit further back, so that's the lead of the challenge classes. Jim Manolis now throws himself into the equation as the door firmly closed by Ben Fossel, who's worked very hard to take that position away. Jim's upgraded his Corvette Z06R, and it wasn't ready to be debuted this weekend. He needed a championship class car, as we see him cross the start-finish line now in that gorgeous red Ferrari 458. Plenty of mumbo in a straight line. He took over that car for this weekend, of course sponsored by Trofeo Motorsport, Ferrari Racing Days, for the Sydney Motorsport Park event a little bit later in April, and the pits.
So that's him on the screen now. Pirelli shod car. Here we've got
this is
Ben
for the
Eggleston
trophy class lead, I think.
Yep.
Is right on now. Liam Talbot's a little bit further ahead in the squirk.com.au Audi. So,
and Theo Conduras as well in the
Porsche.
Of course,
yes, race winner
just
yesterday.
Streaming down the straight now, going across the line, a complete lap. Number 9. Here come the rest of the protagonists in that race down the straight. Liam Talbot for squirk.com, the J McPem Audi. And, of course, Ben Eggleston, who is charging hard for Ala Moana down the straight. The little bumps just there as we're just seeing the Equity 1 car working through there with Dean Koutsamides.
It's very close, isn't it? This is just what we want to see. This year we were talking about trophy class. Some of the cars that, we best explain what trophy class is to start with. It's cars that are 2 years or older specification outright championship class cars. So they're 2011, 2012 model Audi R8s as an example. So all those older cars get classified as trophy class cars. They're not outright championship cars. And that's the battle that these guys are having. So some of these guys were actually in the championship class last year. The Koutsamides Audi, the Rod Salmon Audi, although this is a different car to the car that Jason Bright had that quite dramatic qualifying accident in at Bathurst earlier in the year. But these guys have stepped back into this class thinking they'll make it nice and gentlemanly. They'll all have a good time, have a barbecue and a couple of beers afterwards and a bit of a laugh. And how great was that, boys? But by looking at the entry list, when you see co-drivers the likes of Daniel Gaunt, James Winslow, Liam Talbot, there's a bunch of young, fast guys that have become co-drivers with this category. So I think they're taking this not so serious thing a little bit too harsh. I mean, this is really sheep stations in the trophy class, which is great because it creates another championship within a championship.
Oh, look, it gives an avenue for some of these younger drivers, a different drive, a different style of motorsport to put on their CV. Wilson Security, Janice Steele, AMG on screen there with Richard Muscat leading the field now. He's got a 6-second lead over Tony Quinn, and Clark Quinn a further second behind there. So the Quinn Motorsport outfits, the VIP pet booth and the Darrell Lee entries there, as Richard's found the flasher switch as well as he is charging down the straight here at Sandown. He's got a drag race with Jim Manolis here, so the 458 Italia being just caught by Richard there, gets through in the Jenna Steele Wilson Security car. And I dare say Jim Manolis is just getting out of the way there. He'll have Ryan Millier on the radio just saying, This battle is not for us today. Let these guys get through. And Jim, of course, is, he's probably the poster boy for the gentleman races out there in the Australian GT Championship.
Jannetta's just cut across in front of Dean Koutsamides there in the Audi. And this is the thing we spoke about a number of occasions last year, is the visibility inside these sports cars. A sports car traditionally is sitting very low. Often there isn't any rear visibility outside of a camera in the middle of your dashboard.
Well, let's face it, if you're in one of these cars, you're going past someone.
Well, you're more worried about what's in front of you than what's behind you. So for guys like the Jannettas, they're very much watching their mirrors. But given things like hands devices, safety cell seats like the Erebus Mercedes and the Audi have, very big wraparound side wings, it's very hard to move your head left to right, much less have visibility left to right. So when you see guys seemingly cut another car off in a corner, quite often it's because they have absolutely no idea that car's there. So that's something these faster guys have also got to be aware of when they make a passing move. They may have to choose their moment. The perfect example is the front straight at Sandown and the back straight at Sandown, rather than a tight corner.
Richard Muscat's just grabbed another 2 seconds on that last lap. Tony Quinn clearly caught up in a lot of traffic at the moment, getting through on Ben Fossil and George Fossil out there, who were champions in their class last year.
Absolutely, and, challenge class champions.
New livery car in the yellow and black really stands out. It does look fantastic on screen in the motor school entry. There's the VIP Pet Foods, the Aston Martin Vantage in Chargers. You've got to say that one is ideal for the Sandown layout.
Absolutely, as we saw off the start of both races. It even out-dragged the SLS AMG, which has got bolt torque. We know what that's like from a standing start, as Tony Quinn comes up behind Jim Manolius, dives down the inside into Dandenong Road corner. There's a Lamborghini spun up there too. That must be Jan Ginadasa backwards into the kitty litter at Dandenong Road. Now, I apologise for Jan if he's still... No, there he is on screen. That may well be a safety car. And what this will do will completely open up the whole race.
And it's a real shame for Richard Muscat, because he has got himself at that point a 12-second lead, because Tony
Safety
Quinn...
car. Now, we were talking earlier about what happens with driver grading penalties based on the professionalism of the driver or the skill of the driver. If they're a professional full-time V8 supercar driver, they take a longer time penalty during their compulsory pit stop. That's because they will get away at a rate of 1, 2, 3 seconds a lap over some of the car owners or the gentleman drivers. That's great as it was right now. Richard Muscat was currently somewhere in the vicinity of 45 seconds clear of the Stephen Richards, Justin McMillan Interloy Lamborghini. If this race had gone all the way through without a safety car, he may have pitted at 45 seconds ahead, but he wears a time penalty that would negate 35 seconds of that particular penalty that they wore in pit lane, which means that the McMillan Richards car, now with Stephen Richards at the wheel, would only be 10 seconds behind after the compulsory stop. Now we have a safety car period. The time will be negated back to however long it is between Richard Muscat at the front of the field and where that Lamborghini is currently in the field, which at the moment is shown in position number 11. So it would only be the time it takes at pace car pace, whatever time that is, which we will see when they come around in the next lap or so, that might be reduced to 15 seconds. So that advantage that Richard Muscat had immediately before the pit window opening at the 20-minute mark is now all but gone. So advantage now to another Lamborghini, not the one that spun into the gravel, to Stephen Richards in the Interloy Lamborghini Gallardo FL2.
Something else, Sean, you may be able to clear this up, is that the likes of Jim Manolis and those guys, are they going to be waved through to come back around onto the back of the field by the safety car, or we just pick up the leader and they all just continue
I believe they will pick up the leader.
Yep.
Now, we've seen last year on a couple of occasions, and the cam stewards are only saying to me yesterday that the big problem they've got is when a safety car period happens in the pit window, and the pit window opens at the 20-minute mark and closes at the 40-minute mark. If the safety car at that point picks up the leader, quite often the clever teams will pit the leader just as the safety car period or the safety car period starts, which means that as the safety car goes to pick up a car, they come out of pit lane, the leader comes into pit lane, they've then got to pick up the next car in line. Now, that may be a lapped car, and often that's created some level of confusion. So these are issues that they have to sort out. The whole idea of all these pit penalties, driver penalties, time penalties, additional 5-second penalties based on your starting position, etc., is to have a race at the end of the race to make sure these guys are all battling for position as at the end of an hour or at the end of 3 hours.
We've seen, Sean, you and I, we called all the races for the GT Championship last year, and we saw how well that works. It just works so very well that we do get this amazing run at the line and everybody is in there. And hey, that's what it's all about at the end of the race, is having an exciting finish to the race, and it's certainly working very, very well in the GT Championship. And
well, look at the numbers of entries this weekend.
I think the other good thing about that system is that for us to see these cars running as they were built to run, without running, restrictors and rev limiters
which
and weights
has
and
always
stuff like that.
been a problem. These cars are set to set weights, and they're set to air inlet restrictors, which restricts essentially the ability to get super horsepower out of them. You might hear figures like 550 or 600 horsepower when you might know that a Lamborghini Gallardo LP600 or a 640 or something like that may have 600, 700 horsepower. By putting the inlet restrictor in, it brings everybody back to essentially a level playing field. These things aren't unique to Australia. This is a worldwide global formula. So these cars are essentially identical to the cars that run in the Blancpain series in Europe or in the Pirelli series in America. They are essentially an identical setup, which is fantastic because it means a driver here can then go and race in Asia, can race in America, can race in Europe, and the cars, to all intents and purposes, are identical. Even the driver gradings with how that is set up and the time penalties from front to rear, all those sorts of things which are designed around evening out the field, this isn't all unique to Australia. This is essentially a world formula running to FIA specification.
We're seeing a number of the teams get pretty clever with how they're doing that as well. And prior to the races at Eastern Creek last year, Nathan Antunes hadn't been on the Australian GT calendar or anything, but he'd been given an opening by Rod Salmon and he had a race, and then he got a grading, and they had a great run with it. Liam Talbot, another one. Rod Salmon again, reading between the lines, reading in the shadows and the nuances of these things, plucking drivers out that he knows can help him get the result he needs, but also not taking too much of the penalty that may come with having a pro driver on board. We've got some great drivers. James Winslow, for all intents and purposes, this guy's going to be racing at Le Mans this year.
He will be racing at Le Mans this year, absolutely.
It's a given. But having said that, he's here this weekend. He's driving an Audi R8 LMS.
Well, that's a good part. We're talking about Pro-Am and gentleman drivers with professional drivers. Part of James Winslow driving this weekend is in part to repay the support that drivers like Dean Koutsoumidis and Rod Salmon, who he drove with last year, gave him to allow him the ability to go and race in the Asian Le Mans series last year in a prototype car, an LMP2. He led the championship all the way up until the final round, was still in the box seat to win that iconic drive, the free entry into the Le Mans 24-hour race this June. But unfortunately, a suspension failure in the last hour of the last race after 4 3-hour races cost them position. They finished second in the championship, and it meant that James has to work hard now to get himself a drive. I hear he has got a drive in the Le Mans event this year, but he's aiming to try and get into the prototype category, and we'd all love to see him show how good a driver he is. We saw it yesterday. The top 4 championship class cars got away, and the slightly less powerful trophy class car, the Dean Koutsoumidis Equity 1 Motorsport burgundy, grey and white Audi R8, actually ran 5th and not too far behind the leaders. Now, just very quickly, I'm just looking at the scoreboard. Last time around, we were talking about the 45-second lead Richard Muscat had over Justin McMillan. We bring that up again because Stephen Richards will get in the car and charge over the second half of this race. Oh, they're away again. The difference between the two cars last time round, as the safety car has pulled off, most of the teams have pulled into the pits for their compulsory stop, was 20 seconds, which essentially plays into the Interloy team's hands as Richard Muscat comes into the pits. Jim Manolius comes into the pits. That's one of the Superbarn cars. Look, it's very, very busy. Both Superbarn cars are in. Ben Eggleston is in. Andrew McPherson is in. The Lotus is in. Indiran Padiachi is in the challenge class car. Now, who stayed out? Did we see the McMillan Lamborghini stay out and continue to run around?
McMillan car pressed on. It's still out there on track now. So Tony Quinn is our new leader with Clark Quinn in the McLaren right behind him, being chased down by Peter Edwards in the Il Bella Rosso Ferrari from Maranello Motorsport. As he crests the hill and they start to charge down, the racing is right back underway. It looks like George Ben Fosel have gone through there as well. There's Liam Talbot, car number 6, the Squirk Online Education entry. And he has stayed out, so Liam Talbot at the wheel there, currently in P4. A couple of the cars just leaving pit lane, the Sennheiser car.
Paddy Archie's gone. Tony Quinn's just crept across the line. He's now put a lap on Richard Muscat, who's still in the pit serving his time penalty. He's not far away from leading. The reason we haven't seen Justin McMillan into the pits, and the one thing we need to point out with the professional drivers, the likes of Steve Owen, Daniel Gaunt, Stephen Richards, they're not allowed to complete any more than 55% of race distance. So it's vital that Justin McMillan keeps going around and circulating until he has completed more than 45%, and at that time it will see him hit pit lane. As we see Clark Quinn range up onto the tail of the VIP Pet Foods Aston Martin Vantage as they go across the top on the back straight here at Sandown.
It's not your average father-son weekend away, is it?
I never had one of those, did you?
Aston Martin, the McLaren, and let's go to Sandown and go racing. And boy, they're getting willing. Tony has put the both wheels over the Ripple Strip into Dandenong Road. Richard Muscat is out of the pits.
Very slow Janetta, sorry about that. Yes, Richard Muscat's just rejoined, going through turn 1. A very slow Janetta going across the top there. It's Tony Martin. Hopefully he doesn't have any issues. One of the GT4 Sports category competitors, finished 3rd in the championship last year. See the father and son duo. Now, we're talking about the Quinns. They're not just competitors here making up numbers, are they?
No.
I mean, we've seen Clark Quinn on ability win the championship the last 2 years, and it hasn't
Tony
been
winning
through.
races last year.
Tony won a number of races last year. In fact, 3 races last year. Sorry, that's including the Highlands 101. So Justin McMillan is now shown in position 7. He's 12 seconds behind the race leader, so that advantage is still pretty right. At some point soon, about the 37-minute mark, I think you'll see him pit. So probably another 2 laps for Justin McMillan, the Interloy Lamborghini. Coming up behind Paddy Archie now, and not too far behind the trophy class competitors, Dean Koutsamides and Liam Talbot, who are both out there still circulating. So driving front of the field, there's 3 GT cars. Tony Quinn, Clark Quinn, Peter Edwards, GT Championship class category cars. Liam Talbot leads GT Trophy ahead of Dean Koutsamides and Steve McLaughlin, the 3 of them in 2011 spec Audi R8 LMSs. And Dale Patterson, position 8, just behind now Justin McMillan. So gaggle of cars over the top, heading down to Dandenong Road corner.
Looks like a Janetta, and it's a big plunge. That looks like our Lamborghini heading down there as we're looking at the VIP Pet Foods car, the Aston and the McLaren behind. Clark is very, very strong once they come off the long straights here at Sandown. Car number 1 tucks in behind the VIP Pet Foods car, follows him, shadows him directly around the bottom end of the course here. Over the causeway they go, and that Aston Martin just has the absolute wood as they head up the hill there. The battle that we're talking about raging down there with Andrew McPherson leading them up with Griffin, Theo Konduris and Brendan Cook all in that battle there. There's the red Corp car again down into turn 4. Yanja Nadasa weighing in on that as well.
Good to see him recover from being dragged out of the kitty litter so he can carry on. JJA Consulting, LP520. A very different car to the LP600 Plus, the FL2, the 2013 specification GT3 car that's currently being driven by Justin McMillan. Different generation, better aero, more power in the engine. The designation 600 stands roughly for horsepower, so the 520. 520 horsepower out of the V10, 600's roughly 600 horsepower out of the V10. It's not exactly like that, but that's a good rule of thumb.
And generally it means you've got that because the Italians don't tend to overquote. Here we go. We've got the Peter Edwards car in. This will be for a driver change to John Bell.
Lambo's in too. So Justin McMillan is now
James Winslow will be getting in the Equity 1 car as well.
So things are going to start to heat up.
It's only 30 minutes in, so just beyond half race distance, and we're starting to see the seated drivers get chucked behind the wheel. Keith Kasuki in the Ascari.
Holding down position 9 as he came in, would be position 5 in the GT Trophy class. That's not a bad result. Just checking tyre pressures, make sure everything's right on the Equity One Audi. Of course, they can do tyre changes if they need to, but we've already seen on a number of occasions last year, and again during the Bathurst 12 hour, that Pirelli slick, the DH, is very, very consistent and very, very quick. The lap time set by Shane Van Gisbergen, the new lap record at Mount Panorama, surprised a lot of people on the harder compound Pirelli as to just how versatile that tyre was. So you're not going to see, unless there's a problem, too many drivers making tyre changes during the course of this 1 hour race.
Richard Muscat crests the hill and plunges down into Dandenong Road. He's been very polite. He's giving everyone plenty of room to race around. Puts his nose down the inside of Andrew McPherson. He knew he was there. He trailed him all the way up the back straight. Wilson Security, Jenna Steele.
And guess who's leaving pit lane right now? We did talk about that advantage that Muscat had early. Stephen Richards has now just rejoined the circuit. So you can see
James Winslow.
Absolutely. So whilst he was being very gentlemanly, Richard Muscat, getting around Andrew McPherson in that Porsche, he knew he needed to press on.
And there he goes as they are all on the straight at the one time. The advantage that Richard Muscat will have right now is that he has got a warm set of tyres underneath him. The tyres in this car, the Interloy Lamborghini Gallardo, will have just cooled off. Brakes will have just cooled off. But boy, oh boy, the driver behind the wheel will be and truly red hot.
Absolutely. This is a guy who's, of course, the reigning Bathurst 1000 champion last year alongside Mark Winterbottom, driving this year with Craig Lowndes and the Red Bull Holden team. So it'll be interesting to see how Richo goes. So
he's got another podium coming, hasn't he?
Oh, you'd expect so, the way they've been running down in Tasmania this weekend. But also, too, the Erebus Motorsport team. A shout out to them. They've done a great job in Tasmania this year.
Now Muscat in behind Keith Kasuki. He is letting him know. Looks to the inside. Racing room given there. Oh, Edgar and Padiacci just comes across in front. There wasn't the corner for Richard to take there, so he continues to race for it, and he is chasing down. Let's have a look at it. At the moment, we still haven't had our lead cars of Tony Quinn, Clark Quinn, Liam Talbot, and Steve McLaughlin have not pitted, but Patterson currently in the pits. Ben Eggleston has pitted, and he is currently sitting in sixth. So Stephen Richards, Ben Fossel, Theo Konduras, Richard Muscat rounding out our top 10. Let's have a look at it as far as a GT class goes. It's Tony Quinn to Clark Quinn, still not pitted, but it is Stephen Richards who has, Richard Muscat who has, Peter Edwards now with John Bow at the wheel, leaving pit lane, and down to James Konduras in the previous championship winning Porsche.
Where are they situated at the moment? 15th. Okay, it's a long stop for the boys. Steve Owen's professional driver grading will be affecting that.
Yeah, and of course the pro driver grading all sort of got a whole lot more difficult for those guys when the safety car came out. Mark Griffith getting right out of the way of the Quinn freight train. And Tony just comes across in front of Clark again in car one.
We're talking about driver penalties and all that sort of thing. We know now that Stephen Richards has worked himself right back into the equation. What we need to check is the time penalty we're going to see for both car number 1 and car number 7. Car number 1 will be stopping for 93 seconds, exactly the same time as Richard Muscat. So you'd expect to see Stephen Richards leapfrog them. Car number 7 will be stopping for 23 seconds less, by virtue of Tony Quinn being classified as essentially, it's a gold, but it's a gentleman driver. 23 seconds less. So Tony Quinn is almost essentially in the box seat. So his stop will be for 1 minute and 10 seconds. He currently leads Stephen Richards by, let me just check this out, by about 1 minute, is it a lap and 39 seconds?
Yeah. One lap of 39.
Well, yeah, we'll be interested to see how this one plays out because on different parts of the circuit. So that's going to be where the race will be. Currently, Tony Quinn is essentially in the box seat in this race, and the fact that he's running ahead of son Clark when he has to wear a 23-second less penalty, time penalty, it just doesn't seem. I think I've not quite got my maths right there. No, 23 seconds less.
James Winslow now on the charge, getting put through on Keith Kasuki at the top of the hill here. Charges down into the very famous Dandenong Road corner. Of course, your trackside here. You can go and watch down there. The whole viewing mount is open right down to the bottom end of the property there. Great spot to watch GT cars and indeed Formula 3s hang out for the AmChamps because they wobble and hippie shake all the way down through there. Get up on the ripple strips. Not so much in GTs. They do tend to get a little bit more upset by the ripple strips down there as we see the previous car, the car that previously had car 1 on it, now Super Barn with James Konduras at the wheel now. Here is our race leaders. P1, P2 on screen now, charging past the start-finish line to complete lap number 25 with 26.5 minutes left to go in this race. And,
Did you notice what's happened whilst you've been just rattling off the results there? Brand new lap record, Richard Muscat. He's gone faster again. Currently, Stephen Richards is circulating in about the high 110s. Richard Muscat last time round a 1:09.57. So this isn't over by a long shot.
9 seconds arrears of Steve Richards as well. So this is the big test for Richard Muscat. He's had some big tests in season 2013 in the GT3 Cup Challenge. It is a different type of competition in the Australian GT Championship. It is the absolute upper echelon of GT racing in this country. And he has got the likes of Stephen Richards, Steve Owen, John Bow, all joining him out there this weekend, all chasing them down. James Winslow, of course, out there as well.
Steve Richards just firing up the inside of Michael Hovey down at turn 4. Charges along the back straight. So class leaders at the moment, Tony Quinn, GT Championship. Liam Talbot continues to lead in the GT Trophy class as Clark Quinn fires into pit lane in the mighty Twix McLaren MP412C, the Bathurst lap record holder. Different car for him this year. One of the problems they explained to me yesterday, this is an interesting one which you don't really expect. Clark is bouncing around a lot on the circuit, and that's in part because of the bumpier nature of Australian circuits, but certainly Sandown. But because he's such a little bloke, the seat's for a big guy. They can't strap him into the seat tight enough to stop him moving around in the car. So he said, that is really just sort of messing with my head a little bit. I'm not 100% comfortable. You'll see him really snugged in. He'll have his own little safety cell for the next round of the championship, I'm sure. But that's been one element that's had a bit of an impact. Doors just gone up, a little bit of cool air into the car as Richard Muscat fires across the line again.
Can't wait for Clark to get comfortable, because in an uncomfortable car he's still doing 110s around Sandown, so that's pretty good stuff. And I dare say, look, most of these cars are going to be most ideal suited to the Phillip Island Grand Prix circuit. It is more of the European style. It's had a fresh resurface only 12 months ago, so it is going to be fantastic again this year to get the cars down there. Of course, we saw Jack LeBrock just absolutely brain them there last year, lap record after lap record. Did a great job.
Do you want to know how good Richard Muscat is? Look at the advantage that they had when they left pit lane with Stephen Richards. The number of laps that he's been pumping out, they're identical on lap time last time around. Richard Muscat a 1:10.5, Stephen Richards a 1:10.5. But the interesting point here, they're now 5th and 6th on the circuit. 6th and 7th on the circuit, but they'll soon drop Clark Quinn down the order. Yeah, there you go. Clark Quinn's now back to 7th. It's 5th and 6th for Richards and Muscat. Only separated now by, as we see Richard Muscat cross the line, 7.4 seconds. Richo got a little bit of time out of him. He took 8/10 out of him that last time round, but 7 seconds. So he's negated a large percentage of that gap or the advantage that Richo had as he left pit lane. So this is really going to get interesting with 23 minutes left in this race. Rod Salmon climbing into the squirk.com.au Audi R8 LMS. This isn't the car that Jason Bright had the quite dramatic prang in qualifying at Bathurst. That was a 2012 specification Ultra, different aero, slightly different engine specification.
Tony Quinn now into the pits as well.
So with 23 minutes to go, another 3 minutes till the pit window closes. The only person who hasn't pitted so far is the reigning trophy class champion, Stephen McLaughlin, is still out there in the number 75 J-Mac PEM Audi R8 LMS.
Right, now James Winslow finally at last has got some clear track between him. He's got the hold back straight in front of him. He's gone through on Indirium Padiachi. Let's watch and see if James Winslow can, the last time round, a 1:11.54, the fastest lap for that car on lap number 26, which not only says a lot about the ability of the guy behind the wheel, but certainly the equipment under him. The Pirelli's still after 26 laps around here, punching out fastest laps for those cars. That really is a great...
Stephen Richards now, sub 110s whilst we've been chatting. So it's really getting very, very interesting at the front of the field, and they've now moved up to positions number 4, 5. John Bow now holding down position number 6, and he's only 4 seconds back from Richard Muscat. This is exactly what we want to see. Clark Quinn will be not too far behind this battle, and once Tony Quinn rejoins, he's still being shown as the championship class leader. As we see the next car in line, which will be Stephen Richards, is coming down to turn 12. No, he's at Dandenong Road corner. And Tony Quinn won't be too far from rejoining. Oh,
James Winslow down the inside of Liam Talbot.
no,
there.
that'd be Rod Salmon in the car now.
Yep, they've had their pit stop there, so that's a change of position.
Tony Quinn just leaving pit lane now as Stephen Richards fires out of the last corner. Richard Muscat is just coming through the final corner now, and John Bowe will not be there. He is now, not too far behind. So all these guys will be separated by about 10 seconds as Rod Salmon takes a very, very wide line at the kink at the top of the hill, right through the grass, manages to keep it on the black stuff once he came off the grass, and get through Dandenong Road corner. So he's just settling himself into a rhythm.
He certainly jumped out into some traffic there. He had James Winslow on an absolute flyer, range right up on him as he headed down into turn one there. He dispensed with him as we're just down the main straight now. Good look at Jim Manolis and the Pits, his new TV show on Channel 10 in the coming week or so.
We did need to point out that the current race leader for the local fans is Steve McLaughlin, the J. McPem Trophy Class Audi R8 LMS. He's in pit lane now getting a service. He'll lose that position before very much longer, but that's been a fine effort by him. Ben Eggleston still shown in position number 2, and he's still running around. No, he's made his pit stop, so Ben's just going across the line now. That now puts him as race leader.
29 laps completed for Ben Eggleston. Tony Quinn now, Stephen Richards, so they're all quite heavily bunched up there within 8 seconds of each other. Our first three, Richard Muscat comes through. That's 14 seconds down, and he's got exactly 20 minutes left to go as Steve McLaughlin just landed in the pits just in the nick of time for that pit window to be open. Richard Muscat now through turn one for Jenna Steele and Wilson Security. Down into turn two. The Merc looking very, very poised. Absolute weapon of choice around the world in the GT3 series around the world at the moment.
Well, Ben Eggleston's leading this race. He's completed his stop. He's snuck well and truly under the radar. He took a great advantage out of that safety car period, and that negated any disadvantage he had in pace over the other cars. He said to me yesterday he loves this car around here. It's got lots of mumbo. It's not quite the weapon that Tony Quinn has at his disposal, the Vantage GT3. He said very, very competitive car, and he's showing it. Let's keep the fingers crossed that the torque tube manages to make the full 60-minute race distance as he charges across the line. A very squirrely Stephen Richards as the rear of that Interloy Lamborghini lit up as he comes out of the last turn. He's out now no more than 10 car lengths behind Tony Quinn. And across the line now comes Richard Muscat.
I tell you what, the world war out there at the moment, it's the best of British in 1 and 2. And we've got an Italian car and a German car. John
Bowe's now into the 109s also. So lap record has been reset by Richard Muscat a little bit earlier in this race, a 109.5. Quickest lap for Stephen Richards, a 109.8. John Bowe now a 109.9.
Just in the background there, that's our race leader, Ben Eggleston, in the DBR9. Charging up the hill just to the rear of screen is the VIP Pet Foods Aston Martin Vantage of Tony Quinn. And right behind him, it is Stephen Richards starting to range up. There it is, second and third on the road. Jan Ginadasa just watching on the back of Stephen Richards. This could be a masterclass for Jan Ginadasa out there at the moment. Different spec Lamborghini Gallardo, but to the untrained eye, looks very, very familiar. And there he is. Yesterday's race winner on debut in the Australian GT Championship presented by Trofeo Motorsport and Pirelli. Coming around onto the very long straight.
This is
here.
Not good. Stephen Richards in the pit lane. So just as things were starting to look good for him, that now leaves Tony Quinn free. That might be a drive-through penalty, perhaps. Is there an issue with the car? We're just watching it come down pit lane. No, he's going to pull into his bay.
Heading to the garage, yep.
Sounds okay. See whether the boys are going to race out and work on it. They're having a look at the right side of the car. No, can't quite see in the mirror there behind us exactly what's going on. We'll find out what's happening as Richard Muscat now takes Daniel Gaunt, tries to. Daniel's got a very wide Lamborghini FLP 520 as they go up the back straight. So that's now position number 3 for Richard Muscat. So now the race is on, not between Richard Muscat and Stephen Richards. That's game over, unfortunately, for the motorsport team. Not a lot of activity down there now. It sounds very quiet. That's tragic for them after a tough day yesterday. The race is on between Tony Quinn and Richard Muscat. Now, Tony Quinn's actually the form driver coming in this year. at Queensland Raceway last year. He could have won 2 of the 3 races, but he let son Clark win 2 of the 3 races. He won the first. He also won race 2 at Highlands Motorsport Park and the Highlands 101 with V8 Supercar regular Fabian Coulthard. So over the last couple of rounds of the championship, he's had 3 race victories. So he's no slouch, not by any stretch. See the Lamborghini on TV there on the live coverage up on its jacks.
Right-hand rear. We spoke about it yesterday, Sean, how demanding the right front and right rear here are at Sandown. They really do take a lot of load through the car there, and it certainly does become a very big focus for all the teams as to how much wear goes into shock absorbers, suspension components. The tyres as well will start to take some punishment. We've got 16 minutes left in this 1-hour race to complete round 1 of the Australian GT Championship, and John Bowe is on an absolute charge. Fastest car on track by quite a long way at the moment on lap 32.
That's not going to help the race leader. Ben Eggleston trying to go around the outside of this car into the last corner, got caught well and truly hung out. And I'm guessing, because he's such a gentleman, that Keith Kasulki had not seen him and tried to give him room up the inside. Ben had taken the wrong line. That has really closed down the gap, which was 4.5 seconds. It's now 1.9 seconds. Ben Eggleston back to Tony Quinn. The gap behind's also come down. Instead of 3.5 seconds, the difference between Tony Quinn and Richard Muscat is now just 1.7 seconds. And John Bowe all the time is just hanging in there. They've got a whole bunch of lap cars in front of them, slower cars. That will really group the front-running guys up. So this race is going to get very interesting in the next 5 minutes.
And have a look who's ranging up in back of screen there. It is the Bathurst 12-hour winner, the Il Bellarosso Maranello Motorsport 458 Italia. They may not be able to do it as well as they like it in F1 at the moment, but this particular Ferrari is hunting down the quick cars and has been over the best part of 2014 now, as Richard Muscat now also starting to hunt in. Traffic starting to play into this as well. The Alamoana car just been given a good opening through by McPherson. Side by side now, the 2 Astons are going to cross the line astern of each other, mixed up amongst plenty of traffic here. They go through. Richard Muscat also goes down the inside line on those light flashes again, just to let, looks like George Fossil.
Here we go, the race leader, new race leader. Tony Quinn's just taken the lead on the run down into turn 1. Almost stopped in the back end of Dale Patterson's Mosler in the braking area. Now Richard Muscat's up beside Patterson. And now 1, 2, 3 on circuit as they go down to turn 4.
Patterson's doing a fantastic job in the Mosler. He is inside the top 10 at the moment. He's got Rod Salmon and James Konduras in front of him. And, of course, Winslow and McLaughlin in the GT Trophy cars. But what a great run here this weekend in the Mosler for Dale Patterson. Have a look at this now. Richard Muscat playing the game all over the back of Ben Eggleston. Ben Eggleston won't give this up lightly. He's going to race here. He's got the race leader in front of him. He held the race lead for a couple of laps. Muscat down the inside. Eggleston gives him the best part of racing room there, and Richard Muscat goes through. He heads off after Tony Quinn. He's got 13.5 minutes left to do it in. Sean, it's probably a good time now just to have a look at the timesheets, because last time over the line, Ben Eggleston led to Tony Quinn and Richard Muscat. It's now Tony Quinn to Richard Muscat, 1 second further back to Ben Eggleston, 1.8 seconds further back. And John Bowe, 4 seconds now. He's jumped 2 seconds in the last lap. Bowie doing a 13. Everyone in front of him doing 12s, 14s and 11s. So have a look at this. John Bowe pushing very, very hard in the Ferrari.
It's great to catch someone. They've got to work past them. But anyway, let's just run very quickly through the list. The GT Championship outright category is being led by Tony Quinn currently, with Richard Muscat right behind. Ben Eggleston leads the trophy class. We just saw as we were speaking the trophy class winner from yesterday, Theo Konduras, being pushed down pit lane. So that looks like game over, unfortunately, for their Cup S. We also see Jan Ginadasa coming back into the pits, or the Jan Ginadasa car with Dan Gaunt behind the wheel. So they have a bit of an issue back into pit lane. But trophy class being led by Ben Eggleston very, very comfortably. Steve McLaughlin, next one in line there in position number 6. The GT Championship battle has currently gone back. It's swung in the favour of Brendan Cook and Matt Kingsley, with Matt Kingsley back behind the wheel. George Fossil is a couple of positions back in 17th. back behind the Jim Manolius Ferrari 458 Italia that we saw battling with them a little bit earlier in the race, and Indiran Patiachi is a couple of seconds further back. And leading the GT Sports class currently is the Lotus of Tony Alford in position number 19. Tony Martin is currently shown as second in that class. Mark Griffith in pit lane and has been now for a number of laps. So a couple of cars starting to suffer as Richard Muscat ranges up again onto the back of the VIP Pet Foods Aston Martin Vantage GT3.
And have a look at this now. It is going to be Ben Eggleston that has got his mirrors full of the Maranello Motorsport 458 as they go up the back straight there. The Aston Martin has definitely got the same amount of pace in a straight line as the AMG does. They plunge down to Dandenong Road. This is for the lead. Richard Muscat has looked to the inside every lap and gained lap position each time he's gone through on someone. John Bow now in the back of Eggleston there. Looks to the inside. Tony Quinn holds his line, turns in where he would normally be. Richard Muscat getting very brave there. Tony was always going to do that, but Tony's starting to feel the pressure. He's gone right out over the backside of the ripple strip coming onto the straight, and he's ultimately got the pace down the straight. It's certainly not going to be something that Richard Muscat's going to be able to stream by the Vantage in a straight line. The VIP Pet Foods Aston is very rapid. Bow now has gone through on Eggleston, so he runs up into position 3. And, well, this is the way the driver advantages and disadvantages start to unfold in GT racing right now. A very, very exciting last 10 minutes of this race coming our way as Ben Eggleston is just dropping off the back now. We now start to look for where Clark Quinn is. He is some 15 seconds down on our race leader, 12 seconds behind Ben Eggleston at the moment. Is he going to be able to make that gap in 10 minutes? It's a pretty big ask for the McLaren driver, but at the moment, have a look at this. This is for the race lead. Down the inside, Richard Muscat. Tony Quinn tries to crowd the corner, but Muscat arrived very, very early there. Tony Quinn just looked at it and said, no, I'm not going to bend it up here. There you go, Richard. It's Tony Alford now, the Donut King. Lotus Exige has got Mercedes one side, he's got Aston Martin the other. Tony Quinn is not saying no, and neither is John Bow.
Who's behind
that
them.
Traffic is just working in Bowie's position there. 3 times Gold Star winner.
Nose to tail, freight train down the front straight. Tony Quinn pulls out and goes around the outside of Richard Muscat down to turn 1. No, couldn't get it. Now he's going to look at the inside and the crossover. Again, Richard Muscat protects the inside line all the time. John Bow gets closer and closer and closer. He takes a look. Oh, this is going to be very close. I'm sorry. We need to explain what we've just seen.
Tony Quinn is saying, boy, I've had this race. I've been doing well. They're looking down the inside, left, right and centre. And John Bow is putting this Ferrari out over the back of the ripple strips like it's a V8 supercar of the past. He is absolutely throwing everything at it. We saw Shane van Gisbergen doing that at Bathurst in the McLaren. Let's hope that Jim Manolis gets well out of the way here as Richard Muscat looks to the inside, as does Tony Quinn. Race leaders go through. Tony Quinn just getting his mirrors filled up with that Ferrari now. A bit of dirt getting sprayed out of the back there. He looks to the inside of Jim Manolis in the 458 as Jim manages to hold his line there. There's 2 458s and they're giving Tony absolute hurry on. Bow gets through on the VIP Pet Foods Aston Martin Vantage. This is the drag race that John Bow didn't want to have. They go side by side down the Sandown straight into turn 1. It is going to be the Aston Martin Vantage. Streams through Bowie, has it off at the bottom, as does Quinny. Cops Jim Manolis in the side and into the barrier as they go.
That's quite a big hit. Jim should be all right there. He obviously can't see much with the bonnet folded up in front of him. Tony sideways into the fence. They just ran very deep under brakes in a braking duel, and we saw the...
Jim Manolis, he's got the door open.
That's good to see. Yes, John Bow ran wide. Tony Quinn tried to get up the inside, got the car over the curb. It just spun him on the exit. There wasn't much he could do, and unfortunately for Jim Manolius, very blind going into turn 1. As he came through, of course, he had an Aston Martin broadside across in front of him, and very little that he could do about that. That'll be safety car, I should imagine.
You'd probably expect so, because Bowie went off. They've gone to the inside of the corner there where you don't often see cars stop, but if 1 or 2 can get in there, there's certainly an opportunity of another. We'd like to see double wave yellows, no safety car boards out at this stage, but they're certainly covering turn 1, which is the big passing manoeuvre there. Double wave yellow,
Tony's
service
out of the
vehicle on
car,
track.
smoking quite a bit, the Aston Martin down there at the moment. They may just be doing that as a precaution.
Richard Muscat, race leader, now has a good clear lead of 5.5 seconds on John Bowe. John Bowe managed to, he went off, and Tony Quinn and himself, they sort of helped each other through turn one there. John Bowe went wide, Tony Quinn went short into the corner and ended up with Jim Manolis assisting there. And Jim, we hope, is out of the car. And we're just watching now. There is the Victorian Fire and Rescue Squad, race safe down there. So there's both medical and recovery attention down there. So being covered by double wave yellows, which is good. We get to continue racing. It just negates that part of the track, and certainly the officials trackside will be watching to make sure that all of the cars do tend to get out of it, back off, and see the lap times just ease off a second or so over this time. But John Bowe is gone into maximum attack mode, Sean. Have a look at that. 5.8 seconds, now down to 5.4 to Richard Muscat. But you've got to suggest that with 6 minutes left in this race, Richard Muscat is looking pretty good in the Jenna Steele Wilson Security AMG to go 2 from 2.
It certainly looks like Erebus Motorsport have uncovered another young superstar. Of course, they put reigning at that stage Formula Ford Australian champion Jack LeBrock into the car for 2 rounds last year. Set lap records at both circuits and won every race he entered, and I think he was on top of all but about one practice session. And that was, we see Keith Kasulki spinning. That's on the run into out of turn 12. So hopefully he's all right. He can regather and start the BMW V8 powered Ascari KZR1 down there. He's still stopped. Young Jack LeBrock did a fantastic job last year, and they've now got Richard Muscat, who's clearly stamped himself as a star of the future after his efforts last year in the GT3 Cup Challenge. Unfortunately, Keith Kasulki cannot get that car restarted. The waving yellows are working at both ends of the circuit now.
Yeah, both ends of the straight now covered off by waved yellows. So this is starting to become a bit of a moot point. The Lamborghini, the Interloy Lamborghini, back out on track, and it's Stephen Richards at the wheel. He is sitting in 11th place, done 40 laps, so had a bit of time in the pits looking at the right-hand rear, of course, the loaded side here, and got last year's championship car, James Kanduris at the wheel there, also chasing them down. Gee, those Porsches look menacing when they put the black livery on them. They really do look very, very aggressive. 4 minutes and 30 seconds left in this second race of round one of the Australian GT Championship, presented by Pirelli and Trofeo Motorsport.
Keith Kasulki managed to get himself going, but again, probably not 100% sighted as to what was beside him. Very nearly drove James Winslow off the outside of the final turn as Winslow caught him around the outside. He's now taken Steve McLaughlin. He's currently shown as position number 2 in the GT Trophy class, but what's interesting is Ben Eggleston is still holding down position number 3. He's a good 5 seconds ahead of Clark Quinn, and he doesn't look at any stage like he's going to give up that position and allow the reigning champion to take some more points away in this particular race. But that's a good result for Ben Eggleston after the disappointment he had yesterday.
The Wilson Security Jenna Steele driver Richard Muscat has responded to the charge by multiple champion of various categories, John Bowe, now that went out to... Bowe has responded absolutely on lap 43, a 1:10.5, some 2 seconds he's grabbed out of that one lap to Richard Muscat. You've got to suggest that Damo and the boys at Erebus are back on the phone to Richard saying, you've got to respond again. The wily veteran in the Il Bella Rosso Racing 458 Italia, maranellomotorsport.com.au across the front splitter of that car. Lights ablaze for John Bowe, and he is absolutely alive and well inside there. 458 Italia charging up the Sandown straight, of course, fresh from victory at the Bathurst 12 hour. This crew are running on absolute confidence at the moment. Richard Muscat down the inside now, just about looked at Michael Hovey in the Associated Projects car, but the Jenna Steele driver says, right, I've only got 2 minutes and 51 seconds left to go. I'll get him at the next bend.
So positions as we stand at 2 minutes 45 to go. Richard Muscat leading John Bowe. Ben Eggleston also leading the trophy class category. Clark Quinn, position number 4. James Winslow, second in the Equity 1 Audi R8 in trophy class and 5th outright. Steve McLaughlin, 6th. James Kanduras, shown in position number 7 in the car, of course, that won the championship last year. He shares with Steve Owen. Rod Salmon, position number 8 and 4th in trophy class. Andrew McPherson, position number 9, trophy class. Dale Patterson, still doing a brilliant job in the Orange Mosler, position number 10. Stephen Richards, despite extra time in the pits as we see John Bow dive inside Rod Salmon down at turn 4. Stephen Richards shown in position number 11. Michael Hovey, position 12. Matt Kingsley in Brendan Cook's car leading the challenge class, position number 13. Keith Kasulki, despite the spin and the delays he's had, still holding down position number 14. He's going again now. And George Fossil, second in the challenge class, just ahead of Indiran Padiachi, positions 15, 16. Of course, a shout out to Tony Alford in the Pink Lotus, who's leading the GT4 Sports class, position number 17.
So Richard Muscat now comes around. You've got to suggest he's got at least another lap to go in this race. Last time around, 2.4 seconds to John Bow, but Bowie's been caught up in substantial traffic this last lap. Let's have a look at it as they stream across the line. 2.87 seconds, so Bowie has gone into a program of harm minimisation through then. That traffic was certainly played a part through turn 4 and 5 up the back straight. And here he is again, has to deal with the motor school car. He looks straight down the inside, and John Bow does not diverge his line for one bit. Bang over those ripple strips. I wonder how long the Ferrari can take that punishment that this absolute legend of Australian motorsport is dealing out. Here we have it, 1 and 2 on the back straight. Lights ablaze on both cars here, and what an absolute champagne finish here to the second race of the 2014 GT Championship presented by Pirelli Trofeo Motorsport. Up the back straight goes the 458 Italia into Dandenong Road now. Richard Muscat now starting to use all of those ripple strips, and John Bow, he'd give him the sniff of a race win, and he is out after it. 30 seconds left on the clock. I think they're going to get another lap, so this won't be the final lap as Richard Muscat negotiates the final couple of corners. He's onto the front straight now. Still 17 seconds to go. No, we'll get one more lap. Stephen Richards yesterday, of course, got away after he got past Tony Quinn and opened up a 3.5 second gap. And as the laps wound down to the compulsory pit stop, John Bow started to catch him. I asked him last night, did you have an issue or anything? He said, no. Have you seen that bloody Ferrari go over the curbs? He said he smashes it like he thinks he's still in a V8 supercar. And we looked at some of the onboard footage and the oohs and ahs that came out of the Interloy transporter as they've watched John Bow doing exactly what we're seeing him do on screen now. Was quite incredible. Richo said, I'm trying to keep off the curbs, give them a wide berth so it doesn't unsettle the car, but Bowie's just straight lining, straight across the top of them. He's been driving these Ferraris for long enough for Mark Coffey and the crew at Maranello Motorsport. They know how to put these Ferraris together, and you've got to suggest that if you want to go Ferrari racing, they're the ones that to talk to. But Richard Muscat now, you've got to celebrate this young man. 2 years ago, he was driving 944s in the Victorian State Circuit Racing Championship. John Morris saw the talent, and he said, come with me, young man, let's make a star out of you. And John Morris has just quietly in the background helped him out through last year's Porsche GT3 Cup Challenge by Pirelli run. Now he's slotted him in with the Erebus team, and he takes another win. The Erebus crew celebrate that compact little GT crew that Erebus take GT racing with them as Richard wins that race by 2.5 seconds over John Bow. Ben Eggleston waiting now for the blue Aston to come across the line. He's driven a fantastic race, led for 5 laps mid-race and did a great job, and in a GT trophy car, and just used every single advantage that he possibly had that the rules allowed for him to do. And what a great run to the flag there. We had a safety car. We're just watching now some of the other guys run. Stephen Richards now using this as a bit of a test session, charging in the Lamborghini. Let's have a look where Richo is doing 113s on lap 45. Our leaders 110 on the last lap, 110.6 to Richard Muscat, 110.4 to John Bow. Testament to the Pirellis that all these guys are running on the DH compound. They are still good and still able to punch out fantastic lap times at the end of an hour's racing. There goes Richo across the line. Dale Patterson home as well in the Mosler. Great run for Dale. He comes home in position number 11 with Stephen Richards just grabbing him. And on the last lap there, Michael Hovey and Matt Kingsley. So across the podium for this race, Richard Muscat gets the race win. 2 from 2 just like Jack LeBrock did last year for Erebus in the AMG Mercedes. Wilson Security and Jenna Steele plastered down the side of the car there for Richard Muscat. The young man just got engaged to his lovely girlfriend, now fiancée, only a month or so ago. Big off-season for young Richard, and he has got a absolute legend of Australian motorsport, John Bowe, lining up behind him here. And Bowie would be just scratching his forehead at the moment going, wow, we've got our work cut out at Maranello Motorsport to catch this young kid this season. Full commitment to this season, this championship. John Morris, as I suggested, quietly behind the scenes, making sure that Richard Muscat gets every possible advantage he can in his racing career. A good bloke to have on your team, John Morris, and the Jenna Steele Wilson Security car heads out to the scrutineering bay. So John Bowe in second, Ben Eggleston in the Alamoana Properties car looks great, and doing a great job. Clark Quinn comes home in position 4 quietly there in the McLaren. James Winslow brings home the first of the Audis. Second of the Audis will be Steve McLaughlin and Rod Salmon. James Kanduris in there in the GT car as well. He was also running in the Porsche, the number 1 car from last season. Andrew McPherson, what a great run there for Andrew. Position number 9. Stephen Richards with Justin McMillan in the Interloy Lamborghini Gallardo. Had a mid-race sojourn to the pits there, but look for great things to come from the M Motorsport crew. Dale Patterson in the Mosler. Of course, we didn't have Graham Lusty in his Mosler out there. Michael Hovey, position number 12, advancing well up the field there in the GT Trophy class. Matt Kingsley sharing the car there with Brendan Cook. Keith Kasuki, great drive there in the Ascari. And that is the end of round 1 for the Australian GT Championship presented by Pirelli.